Good Tuesday to you all. Hopefully everyone here had a great Labor Day. The whole team obviously was off yesterday, so we're all seeing each other for the first time since the weekend. Also, before we get started, it is Allie Wyatt's birthday today, our co-founder and CEO. So would love for you all to drop some love for Allie in the chat. Also, before we get started, would love to know where everyone's joining us from. So if you could pop into the chat your name, a little bit about your business would be great. That way you all can make connections and possibly start following each other on LinkedIn. But also would love to know, like I said, where you're joining us from. So pop in that information into the chat before we get started. Today's event is pretty special. We've never done this event before. It's an open house for the 10th house. So the 10th house is our private membership community for female founders. We have resources, networking events, in person, online. We have special cohort groups that Carly hand selects based on the information that you submit in your application. It really is a bespoke experience for founders, and we have something for everyone, no matter what your industry or stage are. But before we get into all of that, this is sort of a two-part event. First, I want you to be able to meet the people behind the 10th house and get to know why this community is here, what the purpose is about it, but also what areas of expertise everyone you see right now brings to the table. So you all submitted really wonderful questions that I'll be moderating here in just a moment. And then after we go through those questions, and you will have an opportunity to chat with everyone who you see today, we're also going to do a house tour. So Carly and I are going to show you exactly what you get if you are a member and when you become a member, and then also what it looks like when you join the membership and what the experience actually feels like. So you all are getting something really special today that I'm excited about. And I'm just now realizing that I didn't introduce myself. I'm Avary Bradford. I'm head of programming and events for Female Founder Collective and the 10th house. I also work on the north side, which you may hear about today. But also we have some pretty special people here with us today. Starting, I'll just go in alphabetical order with birthday girl. We have Alison Wyatt here. She's the co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective, the North, and the 10th house. So CEO of 3 different businesses, and she's also an angel investor. So I saw a lot of great questions come in for those of you who are looking to raise. We also have Carly Roth here, who is really the heartbeat of the 10th house. She is our head of community. She's the one who will welcome you all, guide you through your experience, make sure that you never feel alone and that you're always getting something out of the membership. So we have Carly here with us. And then last but not least, we have Rebecca Minkoff. You may know Rebecca as the co-founder of Female Founder Collective, the North and the 10th House. You also may know her as a designer, as an author, and as a podcast host. She has no lack of titles, that's for sure. Speaking of everyone, I want to open it up to questions. You can pop your questions into the chat. I will grab some of those out, but a lot of you submitted questions when you RSVP'd. So I'm going to be asking those today too. So you'll hear me shout out your names. If you hear yourself, just pop into the chat. Hey, that's me. Would love to see who's joining us today. So I'm going to start with a question for everyone. So Rebecca, Carly, Allie, and I also will be answering some of these questions. How did you identify what you were really good at? I'm 5 years into my career in finance/venture capital and have found success, but haven't figured out what I am truly good at yet. And this is a question from Meg K. Rebecca, would love to start with you because your career has spanned across so many years.
So I think that it changes often throughout your life, what you're really good at and what you put your focus on. I know for me, I thought I was only really good at design. And obviously since then have launched so many other businesses and new kind of pillars to the brand. And I wasn't necessarily good at some of those things starting off, but you really learn by failing. So for instance, just to give a short example, like when I first launched the podcast, the agency I had signed with said, oh yeah, we don't need to promote the show. It's going to do great. All of your Instagram audience is going to convert and we're going to sell in like 5 figures worth of advertising deals for you and you'll get a cut. And I was like, well, what does success look like? And they said 30,000 downloads off the first episode. And I was like, okay, cool. Did not know a thing. cut to, we launch it, 3,000 downloads. Obviously, I didn't get paid out on any of that advertising money. And I was like, you guys, what happened? They're like, we just assumed, you know, people would just know. And I'm like, well, is that how this is done? And in speaking to so many other podcasters and people that had done this, no, that's not how it's done. You have a marketing strategy, you go to market, you promote it. You don't just rely on someone's Instagram story to convert 30,000 humans. And so now I can do it in my eyes closed. Now the podcast is successful, but it took that huge failure and the egg in the face off the first bat to then go, okay, what is actually needed? Who's best in class? And how do I build it? So I encourage you to fail because you'll learn the most. And if you keep failing, you'll know that you're not good at it. So I would never be a CEO. I would never want to be a CEO. I am not good when it comes to interpreting numbers, but I know that. And so then I make sure I work with the best who know how to determine that thing. So that's my long answer.
I love that. And speaking of CEOs, Allie, what about you? How did you identify what you were really good at?
You know, it does take time. It's trial and error, sort of like Rebecca was saying, and you realize through the mistakes you keep making in certain areas. I also, I'm a little more of a generalist, right? So I felt like I could execute a project, right? But when I would execute a project, or when I would like put myself in production, say you have a consumer products company, or in our case, if I execute the event and I'm in charge of the timeline, I can do that. But I realized over time that my time is a lot better spent in other places. So for example, I executed an event and that took all my time, right? Executing it. And I know I can bring the dollars in too through brand partnerships, or I know that I can help sell tickets. And my time is going to be a lot better spent from a return on investment perspective if I'm spending it on money and revenue generating activities versus that. Because frankly, I don't enjoy doing project management as much, or production, or being back of house as much as I enjoy doing the sales side of it. So I would also follow your joy, right? Like figure out the things that you naturally gravitate towards in your business, the things that you don't have to put on your to-do list because it's already top of mind because you sort of want to do that and you feel really competent in it. The things that come a lot easier to you, that you don't have to sort of motivate yourself to do, which I tend to find a lot of people will ask themselves, how do I motivate myself, in certain parts of your business? You're probably not doing the right part of your business, or maybe if you're a service business, you're providing the wrong services if you don't genuinely enjoy doing it and you have to sort of motivate yourself to come back to work on Monday.
Absolutely. Carly, what about you? How did you become head of community? Why community for you?
Well, I was a founder in my past life. I sold my business in 2012. And when I first got connected to Allie via Annie Evans, we were just discussing everything that her and Rebecca and Elizabeth were thinking towards in terms of community. And I just had so much empathy into the opportunities, the struggles, the hardship. I did it alone with a business partner and got taken advantage by a man because we didn't know anything. And our knowledge and resources and community were limited to none. And so when I heard about what was getting built with, the new 10th house, it was a no-brainer, because being able to provide founders with everything that I didn't have, is a real gift, right? And I'm so passionate about it because I see how members and women are just so naturally inclined to lean on each other and support one another. And the power of what women can do when they come together is just beyond. So to be able to create a container in which women can thrive, that we are all part of contributing to, just brings me absolute joy.
I love that. And technically I'm a part of everyone who this question was for. So as far as how I got into programming, I originally went to college for education. I wanted to be a professor in psychology. But I realized that nobody was going to tell me how to teach or what to teach. So I figured, how can I teach people in a way that makes sense to me and the things that I care about and how I want to say them and how I see them. And I, like Carly, am currently a founder of my own business, and it really centers around providing education for women specifically to help grow their businesses. So when I met Ali and Rebecca and they were creating a community that anchored in that ethos, it was a no-brainer for me to be able to work with them to continue creating programs and resources for women to grow their lives and their business and whatever that meant for them at that time. So that's on me. And this next question is from Catherine B. This one is for you, Ali and Rebecca. What would you tell yourself in your first year of business if you could look back and give advice? What would you have done differently? Rebecca, let's start with you.
My first year of business. So I thought at the time that I would be swarmed and flooded with orders when I sent my lookbooks out to stores. And I spent a lot of money on those lookbooks, and I bought all my patterns. I graded everything up to a size 12 and down to a size 0. I pre-bought all the fabric. And that was a lot of money that I didn't actually have. Most of it was on a credit card, and I didn't need to do that. I could have just sent out the lookbooks, taken orders, bought the fabric later, waited till I saw the size runs that these stores wanted. So I felt like I moved too quickly and anticipated just like that the earth was going to open. Everyone would say, she's God's gift to women, let's order. And I think, I was like, oh, I'm going to have 150 stores. And I had 2, and I had to build it. And eventually I had 150 stores I sold to. But again, it took time for that to happen. So I would have been smarter on how I deployed my capital, because it was limited. It was $10,000 in savings and a credit card that I honestly had no idea how I was going to pay it back.
I don't think people know that part of your story, that your business was basically started with a credit card and was bootstrapped. And same thing for the 10th house, for a bootstrap business. We have Ali, who's an expert in investing and is going to answer some questions about that. But I think it's interesting. We have resources for people who are looking to bootstrap and who never want to take on an investor, but while wanting to avoid that credit card debt. Ali, what about you? What would you tell yourself in your first year of business if you could go back?
I read this question. I struggled with it because I think you make the best decisions you possibly can with the information you have at the time you have. So it's like, there's a lot of things I would change looking back now with the benefit of hindsight. But I think one thing that I always do at the start of every business that I learned the hard way about was to create a forecast, right? Model it out and create sort of these least, better, best scenarios, so that at the very least, you're always tracking how you're doing, because that way you won't put yourself under with the first launch of a product that you have or whatever you end up doing. But what I would say to that is lower your expectations, even one below the least or the worst case scenario. Because I think, like Rebecca, if you're an entrepreneur, you're an optimist. You think that you're going to be able to defy the odds and create new limits and sort of new pathways for the products or services that you're offering. But leave room for learning, and don't, blow it all right out of the gate. Really do some testing and learning to make sure that you have product market fit, that you have something that people want to buy. Like Rebecca said, if you have a product or an e-commerce company, like, do pre-orders and don't go out and buy all of that inventory, because you might be stuck with it and a ton of debt on your side. And similarly, in a non-product company, maybe underestimate how many people are going to ultimately buy your services or your tech services, because there's going to be so much that you learn as people start using it, and you just really can't ever get it right out of the gate. So I think it's just have a very open mind, lower your expectations, and that way, you know, it's wonderful if you exceed them, and then you can address it when you have success.
Yeah, I feel like that's so relevant no matter what business you have. Carly, this next question is for you, and it's from Alexa Z. And that is, how can you foster meaningful connections inside the 10th house, especially if you're busy? Obviously, we're working with founders who, in theory, are extremely busy. So how can they get the most and make connections?
Yeah, great question. This sounds really simple, but the first way is definitely participate and engage in a way that works best for you. So what does that mean? When building the community, we thought through all the ways that everyone learns differently and engages differently and takes in information just like in school. So for you, if you are a learner and you are focused on education, soaking in the information and the programming that Avary puts together, that Allie and Rebecca host, is a fantastic way, because there's always chats going on. There's always engagement, Q&As to be participating in. And if you are someone who, you know, learns better by engaging with people, which is where I live in the world of having conversations, networking, the community is so robust in ways of support. So make sure you introduce yourself, respond to questions that the community is asking. If you have a resource or a specialist that you can contribute to the conversation, definitely share your resources. We also have a lot of community engagement participation. So we have community conversations where we'll get to those in a bit. But those are really amazing for you to basically sit around a digital table and have discussions. If you're focused on one particular time of day, right? If you give yourself Friday mornings to jump into the community, give it your all. Focus in on that, dedicate it the same way you would as a meeting, because there's a lot in the community. There's a lot of different ways that you can participate, but I would just say be dedicated to the time that you carve out for the community, because the more you put in, the more you're going to get out. And when I speak to members, they're like, oh, I didn't, you know, I feel lost. I was like, you've never logged in, you've never participated. And if you don't say hello, nobody knows that you exist, and nobody knows what you need support on. So treat it like an important meeting. And if that only means a half an hour once a week, give it the full 30 minutes with no interruptions, so that you get the most out of it. And then obviously as a member, once you're inside, I'm always happy to set up a time to walk you through, to help you navigate, and to make the most of it so that you can keep everything really focused as you need it.
Absolutely. I think it was Allie who said this in a previous event that we had, but I think you should go in knowing what your goal is and hyper focus on what relates back to that goal. If it's to build a in-person community, go to a city session or host a city session. If it's to connect with investors, fill out our form and share your pitch deck with the community. If it's, you know, if it's to learn and upskill, it's, you know, you go to our events and our workshops. There is something really for every goal. So know what your goal is and focus on that, and kind of put your blinders on until you, you know, feel like you've executed that goal, and then you can start.
Yeah. Just to tag on to that, Avary, I will say that's such great advice. And don't look at it as though you are trying to plan for the whole year. Maybe every month or every 2 months, take a moment to think about what's coming up in the next like 3 to 6 months of your pipeline, or 3 to 6 weeks of what you're focused on in your roadmap, and make that your focus. And you can, you know, you switch it as time comes, but I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I add a thought?
Yeah.
I think that, you know, prior to launching FFC and having belonged to other communities, you know, when you're at the level of just starting out, you might be saying to yourself, oh my gosh, you know, I'm earmarking this money to be a part of the community, when how am I going to afford, you know, the next thing I need to buy, to whether it's production or something to add to your tech stack. And so for me, when I would commit the funds, I was like, what is the first thing I need to achieve within this community to feel like I got paid back, right? And from there, everything is gravy, you know? So whether it was meeting an investor or helping someone source something from China, like what is that thing you're going to seek out as your first day, week, month that makes you feel like, okay, this alone was worth it, because I would have spent far more outside, or the time spent looking for something. Because I can guarantee you that between all of you that are here today and the women that are already part of this amazing community, the shortcuts you will have will repay you in lots of ways. And that's something, with the four of us and, some of our other team members having been part of lots of communities, that we want to make sure you feel that value.
I 100% agree. And Rebecca, while you're in the hot seat, this next question is for you. And it's from Amanda J. You have built such a loyal following, whether that be people purchasing your books, listening to your podcasts, buying your designs. What is the best way to build brand loyalty, in your opinion?
I think it's your access to the customer and them feeling like you are in it. And that doesn't mean that everyone has to be the face or, be the subject of a photo shoot, but how do you show up as a founder to your customers? It could be sliding into the DMs of your customers. It could be sending personalized thank you notes. It could be every time you get an order from a store, you're calling the store to thank them. I think there's so many ways to continue that one-to-one. And again, setting aside time for that one-to-one connection. And then, as you grow and scale, how do you if you can't do it all, make it still feel like the thoughtfulness behind, so for my book launch, I sent, I think like 5,000 books to my top customers. So I didn't write a hand note, but, we printed like, thank you so much for your loyalty. You've been an awesome customer. Here's a free book. So I think that, it's finding those surprise and delight moments that your customers appreciate and that they remember.
Love that. That's amazing. I don't know if I knew that you did that. Allie, this next question is for you, and it's from Lindsay H. And that is, I'm close to finishing my business plan for an e-com store, but I need capital to purchase products before I can launch. I don't know the first thing about finding investors that are right for me, and I'm afraid they will want to change my business or take a large percentage of ownership. What advice do you have for someone needing under 50K of startup capital for an e-commerce business? Oh, Allie, let's see. Is it letting you unmute now? There we go.
Yeah. I was like, everybody on mute. Yeah. So honestly, this is a really hard one, particularly in this environment, for a products business. I think Rebecca answered the question a little bit earlier, where I would, as much as you possibly can, try to figure out pre-sale. I'm not sure what kind of e-commerce website you have, if it's a marketplace, if it is a direct model, if they're all sort of your personal brand goods that you're going to be producing. But the other thing you could do is it could be consignment if it is a multi-brand retailer. But if you are producing product, I would, because no investor is going to say, thumbs up, I will give you money, unless you've already shown that you've had a certain amount of sales against the product, which it sounds like you're launching. You're pre-revenue, pre-product, maybe even. So that's going to be almost impossible to get. So I would really think about, okay, could I get a credit line, or could I actually go out and do pre-sales so that I know exactly how much I'm ultimately going to be fulfilling in sales? It's a hard market right now, and there's new sort of products that are coming out, and vehicles coming out from an investment perspective. But particularly for consumer, doing anything that is pre-revenue, pre-seed, seed stage is very difficult right now, because venture investors in particular are looking for return. The other thing I would say is maybe look for angels who are strategic, who have lived and grown and sold companies inside of the exact market that you're building in, because they're the only ones that are going to understand the real opportunity behind it. And they might see this as, this is an amazing founder who has so much potential. And so maybe they'll invest some money in your business. in addition to their own sort of personal capital, or they'll know the people to talk to. But I wouldn't go to venture capital at all in these early stages.
Super helpful. And I think we have a specific question about how to connect with investors later on. So I'll bring that up when the time comes. But this next question is back to you, Rebecca. And that's about how you think about the line between respect, boundaries, and lightheartedness as you are the face and inspiration behind a business, but also someone who is running a team. I thought that was an interesting
where do you think, like, my boundaries are different, let's say with work, than with a stranger who's like, hey, can we just have coffee? I guess I'll start with work. So my boundaries over the years have changed with each child that I choose to produce. And I have made sure to test my boundaries, and knowing for me, not what someone else shows on their Instagram, is where I need to tap out. And then where do I staff up in the home and in the office in order to take off some of the stress and pressure, because we can't do it all, right? It's a myth. No one can, man or woman. So I think it's testing where you're at your max, where your RAM exceeds. And, I'll say this to my husband, I was like, my RAM has exceeded, need you to take this on. And so I think you have to do that, because you have to get good at delegation. And if you want to grow, you can't be the only bricklayer in your company. And you need to find, as Ali calls them, your generals who can keep things going and moving. We have, incredible generals at FFC who take their areas and own them and execute them. And that's not easy to find. And you'll go through a lot of times where you're going to hire someone and they are lazy or don't want to work, or, all the fun things that happen when you have employees. So I think you will establish your boundaries slowly and with a lot of trial and error. And that's kind of how I structure it now. And now it's very clear. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly who's doing what. And so it runs like a pretty smooth machine at the office. As far as outside of that, my boundaries, I think the only time I put up a boundary is if I'm in an uncomfortable situation. Like we'll have public appearances and sometimes there's a man in the line. I'm like, I don't want to take my picture with you. You're not my customer. So if you buy a bag, I will take a picture with you. But I think as far as other boundaries, I've always been open and love meeting my customers and want to see them and talk to them and hear about them. But if you're a man, you cannot put your arm around me to take a picture at my appearances. That's the boundary I have.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned something about team earlier in your answer, and it leads naturally into this question from Valeria, and that's for both you and Ali. And that's, what are your philosophies on hiring and managing a team of highly autonomous people? And what do you recommend as the first few hires? So let's focus on that first half about what your philosophy is behind hiring and managing a team. Ali, let's start with you here.
So I love that they asked about highly autonomous people, because that's the first thing that I look for, especially in this day and age, is that you have people in a startup, no matter how great of a coach you are or great of a teacher you feel like you are, or how big of an expert you are in your particular area. The fact of the matter is, if you want to be able to execute and build and scale a business, you need people who can sprint in their own lanes without having you sort of looking over their shoulder at everything. You need to be able to offload decisions. This was another really big one. There's being able to offload and delegate work, and there's being able to delegate decisions. And you want people who make better decisions in their area of expertise than you would, because the decision fatigue as a founder is real. I mean, it's like there's so many decisions that need to be made a day, and you need to say, this person is the person that makes the decision and approves in this area. So I think it's really, you sort of answer the question in asking the question, and that you want to look for autonomous individuals who are self-motivated, who have very clear goals on what success looks like. Because if they have clear goals, if they know what success looks like, if they know what their priorities are, if they know what their regular goals are, then they can be really autonomous, right? If they don't know what those things are, then no one, even the most self-motivated employee, can't be autonomous because they don't know where they're going, right? It's like the equivalent of getting in an Uber and being like, I'd love to go somewhere, and then not actually telling them where to go. They're gonna sit there no matter how good at sort of driving and navigating they are. So I would think about it that way, autonomy, but you have to give them the structure and the support to actually be autonomous.
Absolutely. Rebecca, I've heard you talk about this before, but would love, this is kind of a different way to phrase it, your philosophy on hiring and managing.
Oh God. I think when I first started, I wanted generalists because there was like a sinking ship of things that needed to get done. And I just needed someone who was good at execution, who could help me. And then as soon as we can kind of got above water, it was like, all right, what is the area that's the most on fire? And simultaneously, what am I terrible about? So what's burning and what do I suck at? And then I would approach hires like that. Again, always hiring for people who could get it done. I think when you are building a company and you're in those early phases, it's really exciting and you get people like kind of drunk on that Kool-Aid, but you want to make sure that whoever's drunk on that Kool-Aid is really able to work hard, work late, work nights, work weekends, because that's what it takes to build a company. So either they're passionate about it and they love the mission, the idea, or there's, hey, I can't pay you as much as, you need, but, maybe there's a equity pool for employees or other perks you can give people to incentivize them if they stay and work hard. And then I think the bigger you grow, then you start getting much more granular and specific, with regards to who you're hiring. But I look for a firm handshake. I look for them to look me in the eye and not have their eyes be darting around nervously. And someone who's not going to ever say to me like, oh, that's not in my job description. Because when you're growing a company, everything is in your job description. There's going to be things that as a founder you didn't know that needed to get done. And to have someone tell you that is like the worst feeling, because you're like, wait a second, I'll do it, but I need help. Can you help me do it too? So I think having those honest conversations with people, and then in those moments where it's happening, recommunicating that is really key. And I have noticed that the younger workforce, not all of them, but some of them really feel like this is their box and they don't want to go outside of it. And I'd say, then don't hire that person. Really make sure that this person's ready to swim with you.
Yeah, like Ali said, flexibility is huge in those beginning stages. Ali, this next question is for you and Carly, actually. And this is specific to service-based business. We've talked a lot about product, but what are the best resources if you're a service-based business as it relates to joining and being a member of the 10th house? I can say, from my opinion, one of them is to share your areas of expertise. I technically am a service-based business owner. You are in the weeds. You get to know an industry or a strategy, a methodology, a framework so much better than someone in a different industry or business model, rather. And one of the greatest ways, I think, for service-based businesses to take advantage of being a member is to share their expertise. So as a member, you can do a co-branded resource, and we promote that on your behalf. We work with you on the content, and it's you sharing your expertise, but we're spreading the word. So we're allowing or helping you get your niche in front of people who typically wouldn't be able to access it. But also same thing with hosting workshops and events. And you'll see oftentimes inside of the community, other members who run different types of businesses are looking for experts. So they're looking for someone for a marketing agency or social media agency, or someone to help with branding, or whatever it is. And because we have such a rich resource of members, usually we can say, oh, I know, Carolyn does this, or Sloan does this. You should work with her. We've heard great things about her, or we've worked with her. So those are my opinion, but if you all have anything to add to that.
I would also chime in and say showing, not telling. I think we have a lot of service businesses that have been part of the community that will jump in and immediately start selling, and be like, this is what I offer, this is what I do, like, this is how you work with me. And instead of, this is an incredible place where people are asking all sorts of questions. Everybody needs support and help, and no one, well, I was going to say no one's an expert, but there are a lot of experts in different areas. And I think the power of your knowledge can really shine through by participating in the community and actually responding to some of the relevant questions, because then it more naturally will happen that somebody also sees they have a similar question to one that's been thrown out there, and then they'll see your responses. And then you can go for the sell, right? After you've sort of showcased your knowledge, you've actually given support in some way, shape, or form, rather than just sort of constantly submitting offers. And then, as Avary talked about with the fact that you have our workshops or community conversations that you can host. If you've seen a lot of problems yourself, I would even pose that inside of the community, or reach out to and then answer the problem, right? Like, what are some of the common threads that you see from your clients as a service-based business, and how have you solved those problems? And so it's sort of asking the question and then saying, this is how I've addressed it in the past, but would love to open it up to all of you. And then the final thing I would say is that we have our own social platform where people beyond just members are part of it. And as a member, you can reach out to myself or Carly or Avary and be like, I have an idea for content that you guys need to put on your social. And we will cite you, and we will source you, and we will feature you and tag you, which is a really amazing way to drive business to yourself from a whole universe and ecosystem of entrepreneurs that want to get in front of you, or who need your services rather.
Yeah, I would echo everything you both said. I'd also just want to highlight reciprocity is really what makes this community thrive. The more you give other founders and members support, the more you'll get in return, and the more other women see you showcasing and highlighting and providing resources without soliciting the business is when women see the authenticity of it. And like they both said as well, you know, we have programs that highlight, that are designed specifically for you to be open and to share the special knowledge that you have, that's you showcase every day with your clients. And then on the flip side, you know, you have the ability to look at what your clients are working through, common themes, host those discussions, which ultimately make you a better service provider for those current clients, but then also you're able to highlight your magic to potential new clients who are members in a very authentic way. And from my perspective, the only thing I'm really gnarly about, where I become like a principal on, is nonstop soliciting of businesses, because that squashes the heartbeat of a community so fast. And I will say that our community is actually really remarkable in the fact that there's no spam, and it's really, really maintained as best as possible. But it is really beautiful because we are unique, where you have service providers and product-based businesses working side by side, sharing information and supporting one another inside.
Completely agree. Love those answers. Rebecca, we have one more question for you, and then Allie, I'm going to throw a couple questions at you before we go into our tour inside of the 10th house. You touched on scaling in the very first question that I asked you, Rebecca. This question is from Stephanie, and it's, do you have any mantras you live by in regards to scaling a business?
Yeah, I believe in the idea of this ratio of the more you output, there's going to be a point at which it turns around and stuff starts coming in. And for every business, that's different. And once you find that magic ratio, I say pour on the coals. And you know, early on for me, I would notice that if I passed out 500 postcards in Union Square with the store that carried my stuff, we would sell a blouse. And I was like, great. If I want to hit, if I want to sell out, that's 2,000 postcards. How many, and I would do the math. And I had all these graphs up. So I had that one. Then I was like, how many editors do I have to reach out to get a feature or a reply? And then I tracked that. And then it was, again, this is pre social media, pre everything. But I just started analog style, keeping these metrics, and it gave me a sense of control, and that it wasn't that I was just like blindly reaching out and wondering if the universe would ever return. And so I think when building, you're going to start to see what different outputs start affecting sales and growth, and then that's where you focus your energy and feel like you have some control over it.
That's amazing. I feel like even with the age of social media and things that have been introduced since then, that's still a really wonderful way to track things and to think about scaling. Thank you for joining us today, Rebecca. I really appreciate it. Allie, and if you have any last words, Rebecca, before we let you go.
I just wanted to say I've been reading everyone on the side and some of the businesses that are chiming in what they do. And you guys are all so inspiring. It's so amazing, as always, to see that, there are 61 incredible businesses here today doing something. Allie and I really started with the goal of making women more wealthy, making them more successful. And that is the goal with the 10th house and the incredible team we have here. And so I urge you to take advantage of it. You won't be disappointed as long as you use it. The goal is to make women more rich so that we can, get 50% of what's due to us. So I hope you enjoyed today. I hope you enjoyed the tour, and we'll see you as part of the cohort very soon.
Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate it. Allie, one more question for you, and then I want to switch gears and make sure that we have time to do a full tour. Allie, this question is from Caitlin K, and that is, what advice do you have for finding and pitching strategic partnerships as a startup? And you're so great at this, so I feel like you're a great person to answer this question.
Well, first of all, that's so nice that you say that. I mean, I think it's the same thing with building networking relationships and starting to, not quite the same thing with investors, but it's close. It's a similar sort of methodology. It's first of all, it's doing the pre-work, right? Like when you reach out to a company, you should have very specific things that you're reaching out to them for and already have ideas in your head of, this is how I would love to work together. This is why I chose you. I did my research on your company. This is what I think is so valuable. I think being in a position of having very little time, being another startup or even a big company, there's so few people that actually do that pre-work. It's pretty astounding. How many people even will reach out to us and be like, I love the female lead, or like, I love, they've the completely wrong company, or like, I love that you guys deploy capital. And it's okay if you don't know that, but not if you are reaching out and requesting a partnership. Like, you should have a sense of how they do business, some of their main goals, maybe some of the recent campaigns that they've done if you're seeking to do a growth campaign with them. And then a couple ideas of how you would work together and what value you bring to the table for them. At the end of the day, too, people have so little time. Everyone has little time. How can you help save them time and also be better at their jobs, right? Constantly be putting yourself in their seat of, what do they need and how can my business bring that to them? And I think if you're authentic in that, and that's what you lead with, you'd be very surprised how even people where it's a total cold outreach will actually get back to you, because they're like, great, this person's going to, for free, and that's how it's most likely going to be in the beginning. For free, they're going to help me to grow my business. And I want to align myself with their business because of X, Y, and Z. So I think it's really about the pre-work. It's about the authenticity of it. It's about customizing it, and being really clear with what you're bringing to the table and what you're asking for.
Absolutely. I love that. Carly, one quick question for you, because I really want to make sure we have time for the tour. And this question was from Catherine Y. And that is to Carly. I'm curious how you suggest building community when you're just starting out. How do you generate real engagement from a startup position and keep your community thriving? I feel like you're really, again, great at keeping the community chatting with one another.
Great question. I think, the nice thing about community is, difficult as it is, you don't need a lot of budget, you don't need a lot of tools, you really just need person to person. And I think if you can look at it and believe that the users that you have or the customers that you have are your core community, and connecting with them and understanding what they need, how can they help you create content, how can they be part of the story, how can they be part of the journey, listening to them, and being able, I don't know tons of what the business is, but this was something I learned at a job in 2018, where it's very much built from like top down and bottom up. And so always thinking through how you can rely on them as much as they can rely on you, but getting creative, and also don't let sort of budget wear you down, because community is one of those really, really beautiful and unique areas in a business that it is, again, about conversations. It's about having the whereabouts to get creative with your consumer base and thinking through what they need and getting creative on, if they're showing up for you early days, they believe in what you're building and they want to be part of the story. So being able to let them in, and there's a range, some people want to come in and support with absolutely everything they have, and others just kind of want to trickle in here and there. But have the conversation with those customers, talk to them, and just get creative with them, because you'd be so surprised what people are willing to support you with. That can lead to creative new ideas. And sometimes it's even just providing some content that you can repurpose on your Instagram, on your TikTok, on your website, that, then becomes something new. So just talk to them, listen to them. My favorite part of community is the fact that I get to talk to members all day. And if they say that something isn't working or they want to see something new, we do it together. And just on that note, it's really important for you guys to also know that you curate a lot of the content. And a lot of the programming inside is really based on the conversations members are having. So Avary and I are in constant communication. We're seeing a ton of questions about influencers, about ambassadors, about, how to re-engage with the TikTok rebrand, right? And so I send that over to Avary. Avary finds a specialist, or she'll find someone within the community to lead that. So just look at it as a big circle, and, people, your customers and your users are there to help you because they want to be. So lean on them.
I completely agree. And that leads perfectly into some other questions that we got, which is going to now lead us into the house tour portion of today's open house. When I was reviewing the questions that were submitted, we got a lot of questions about how do we schedule programming? How do we think about what programs we put together? Also, how can you get the most out of becoming a member? Just a lot of really wonderful questions. And I thought, what's the best way to tell you is to show you. So I would love to show you all what is included in your membership, but from a little bit of a different perspective, not just those bullet points that you can see on a website, but to actually go in and show you how people are leveraging what they get as members. So some of the questions that we got were around, like I said, how do we schedule events? How do we think about what we put on the calendar? Also, how do we balance in-person versus virtual events? So going to go over all of this now, and then going to pass it over to Carly to show you a sneak peek inside the actual community. But just for reference, our programs are split into two sections. We have our community and networking programs, and then we also have our upskilling and educational programs. And from a community perspective, this is exactly how we make sure that the audience is engaged. Is we see what questions you're asking. We divide you up into industries or pain points and see what people respond to, and then give you more of what you're responding to. So for community conversations, there are these virtual networking and sort of round table fireside chat formatted events where you can present a pain point or a goal, or maybe something specifically that you're working on within your business, like rebranding, and you bring it to the community and you have a conversation about this topic. It's very much roundtable style. I can't think of a better word to say it. You're not coming to present something. It's really just to collaborate with fellow members. Something that we are really passionate about is making sure that people have in-person opportunities as well. Virtual is amazing, especially for founders who are extremely busy. And sometimes you have to decide, am I going to, I want to say eat lunch, but everybody eat lunch. But for lack of me being able to find a better example, am I going to eat lunch or am I going to go to a networking event today? You can do both because we have things that are virtual that you can, sit and eat your salad while you attend, or we also have in person where you can shake hands and meet people and really feel immersed into the community and your specific community, depending on what market you're in. And these are all across the states. And we also now have people hosting city sessions in different countries. So this is really like you starting your own chapter. We also have the huddles, which are similar to community conversations, except we're choosing the topic. So we will split you up based on industry. That way you all can swap contacts and pieces of advice and resources and tools. We split those up on, so many different things, but business structure is another one of them. Those are really great if you're looking for something specific or looking to meet people specifically in your industry. And then boardrooms are these beautiful small group opportunities or cohorts that Carly puts together based on the information that we collect in your application, which is why you submitting really robust applications is so important to us, is because we want to make sure this experience is very bespoke, as I mentioned before, very tailored to you. And boardrooms are these small groups that you can meet with on a monthly basis and just hold each other accountable and it's truly to act as a boardroom if you were to have a board of advisors, but in a slightly different way. Then we have these upskilling and educational opportunities, and you have as a member have the opportunity to not only attend them but also host them. So people asked, how can I get the most out of this membership, especially for those either product or service-based business. This is the great thing about the community is we host programs for all of the above, etc. For live workshops and panels, we bring in experts. So we decide what those workshops and panels are going to be based on your applications when you apply to the 10th house. When you join the 10th house, you do an orientation. So you actually meet with your cohort. So the next cohort we're having is the fall cohort. And so you're going to meet with all the fall members. My brain won't let me get past summer. So that's why I had to put a question mark next to fall. But you meet with all of your cohort members and you tell us what you want out of your experience. So you're here with us. What do you want to see? What do you want to hear? What do you want to experience? We take screenshots and notes on all of that. And it's very important, especially when Allie and I and Carly and I meet, that we're pulling exactly from what you tell us that you want, and we're creating programs for you. So you can be the one to attend those. You can also be the one to host those and speak on those. Resources, if you're busy and you're like, I don't have time for a full 60-minute event, or I don't have time to wait until Thursday or Tuesday, I need to get this done today. We have downloadable resources that are instant access to different frameworks and spreadsheets and toolkits and all of these things that you can use for instant access to, upskill, but also to move the needle within your business, depending on what it is. We have stuff for bootstrappers and people who are looking to fundraise. How do you get introduced to investors? All of those things. On-demand events, when you sign up, you get access to every single event replay, which I think is either nearing 200 or past 200 at this point. So if there's a topic you're interested in learning about and you don't see an event on the calendar right now, but again, you need to learn it now, use the search feature and you'll get access to that. Same thing with LinkedIn Lives. Final thing I want to mention is the pitch, and that's if you are looking to raise or you're working on your pitch, you're someone who's pitching to possible brand partnerships or collaborators, or if you're someone who's pitching to investors and you want to know how you can perfect your pitch, we have a quarterly event with different angel investors and pitch experts, and they'll tell you exactly how to perfect your pitch before those yeses and nos become truly important. Final thing is, I got this question a lot. How do I get the most out of my membership? How do I know what I should spend my time on as a member? And that is our weekly digest. So if you're like, oh, there's so much going on in the community, there are so many wonderful conversations and events, and I just need a one-stop shop to kind of act as my roadmap for this month or this week, that's the digest. You can decide, do I want to do an in-person event this week? Am I, looking to find out how to, early stage startup fundraising and how to set up my business from a legal perspective? I'll attend that event. Or I want to share that I'm fundraising, so I'm going to submit a form and share that I'm fundraising, or that I'm launching a new, XYZ. That's your roadmap for how to fully utilize the space. So Carly, I'm going to pass it over to you to do a quick tour. I know we only have a couple of minutes left, but we're going to go through just 4 spaces. There are many different spaces, as you can see here, based on what your pain points are, what your areas of expertise are. Also not shown here, we do have some based on actual markets, so you can connect to people based on location. But these are some of the main things that we wanted to show you based on the questions that you had before this event. So Carly, I'm going to pass it over to you for that.
Perfect. And we'll keep it tight. But the first off, forms of submissions. This is a place within the community. We use a platform called Circle. It's like Slack and Yelp had a baby. And it's really incredible, super clean, easy to use. The lobby is where most of our stuff will live when there are announcements from us. But the forms and submission space is so that you have all of the forms and submissions available. We love forms. Keeps everything organized for you to submit things. Like if you're in the middle of fundraising, you will submit your fundraising announcement. If you're recently launching your business or a new product, a new course, whatever it may be, you would submit this here, that they would go into our digest, and as well as our wider new FFC newsletter, posting a workshop. So you'll have time to kind of sift through this. In addition, we also have fundraising and deal flow. This is where we highlight anything related to fundraising and deal flow. If you are fundraising, you can put your decks here, your fundraisers. You can ask specific questions about investors, your searches for angels. Have you had an interaction with this fund? What do you think? There's so many ins and outs that go into particulars. Just why we also have the community center as a place for you to kind of dive into your specific industry with other members as well. Newsroom, highlight your wins, anything exciting, great podcasts that you listened to over the weekend that were super inspirational, really amazing articles. This is really just a place to share different types of resources and news. Melissa, it was really exciting that she made Inc.'s top 5,000 companies for the 2nd year in a row. So all of that really good stuff. We really want to highlight those, but also not get lost on all the areas, like in an ask a question space, of all the things you actually need support on, where people can source and support with resources. So that is a fast version. Back to you, Avary.
I just want to say, and Allie, I want you to close this out. But I am so thankful to everyone who joined us today for all the questions that you submitted. There were so many that we couldn't get to. We hope to be able to do either this event or something similar every quarter. So for those of you that submitted questions that weren't asked today, please resubmit next time, and hopefully we'll get to them. I ended up going with the ones that were most frequently asked. But we do have a special offer for everyone who RSVP'd for today's event that is not yet a member. You will get an email later this afternoon from me. It will say Avary at Female Founder Collective. So check that email and there will be a special offer for you. And there will also be a replay of this event. So if you miss anything, don't worry about it. It will be included in that follow-up email. Allie, do you want to close this out?
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is I was at an event, I think it was last week. It feels like there's been so much happening in the past month, but last week that was all about women and wealth. And Julia Borston, who wrote a book called When Women Lead, talked about the statistics that she found. She had interviewed a number of really successful female CEOs that had built startups beyond a certain level. And the thing that she found that was common with them, and also doing further research, was that they had a really strong community and network of other female leaders and founders. So when we say this, it's not only that it's a nice to have, I think it's a must have if you really want to succeed. And frankly, I've been able to build this really beautiful community of other founders that I can call and be like, I need help with email marketing. Do you have anybody that you recommend to, our revenue is dipping and I just want to cry because I've tried a million things. And there's just certain things you can't share with your spouse or your partner or your best friend, or, frankly, the people that are working at your company, because it's too sensitive. And so this is supposed to be that place where you can find those resources, where you can come and cry and be vulnerable, as Carly shared. And you can come and you can find partners and you can find lifelong friends and people that are going to help you climb that mountain, because there's nothing harder than what you're doing and what you're about to do. But we believe in you. And we would be so grateful to have you as a part of this. So if for some reason you don't join now, there's always later, but definitely keep in touch with us and let us know, what things that we can provide that would also be more helpful for your business, because at the end of the day, this is about you, not us. And we're just grateful to have you here.
I completely agree. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carly and Allie, and everyone who joined us today. I really appreciate it. And for those of you who are members, we'll meet you inside our circle, I'm sure, within the hour. Bye, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye, all.
Thank you, guys.